Only one place to start this hour, and that's with the latest major opinion poll to predict that the Tories are heading for electoral wipeout next week. An MRP poll of more than 19,000 people says Labour will win with a majority of 250. And it predicts that Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, would lose his seat as the Liberal Democrats overtake the Conservatives and become the official opposition. Let's go through the key figures now. And the poll has Labour winning 450 seats. And as I just said, it has the Liberal Democrats getting more MPs than the Tories, with Ed Davis' party on 71. The Conservatives, meanwhile, are on just 60. And next comes the SNP on 24. And the poll projects that Reform will win 18 seats, and the Greens and Plaid Cymru have 4 seats each. And next, when it comes to the share of the vote, well, Labour, as you can see, are on 40% of the vote, and they're followed in second place by Reform on 18%, 2 percentage points ahead of the Conservatives on 16 in third. And then comes the Liberal Democrats on 13%, with the Greens on 8%. Now, the poll also predicts that a total of 22 cabinet ministers will lose their seats at the general election, and they include the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, the Deputy Prime Minister, Oliver Dowden, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Jeremy Hunt, and also Kemi Badenoch, who's the favourite with bookmakers to be the next Conservative leader. Well, I'm now joined by GB News' political editor, Chris Hope. Chris, quite a set of figures to go through here. Let's pick through the top lines. The biggest line is a widening gap between the Conservatives and the Labour Party, if you believe the polls, with a record majority predicted here for the Labour Party.
That's right. Hi, Martin. Yeah, you've got 250 majority for the Conservative, for the Labour Party, forgive me, with the Tory Party pushing to third place with just 60 MPs. They're going backwards from where they were in a similar electoral calculus find out now poll that we revealed on GB News at the start of the campaign. Back then it was around 72 Tory MPs, now down to 60. It may show the impact of the resurgent Reform UK party under Nigel Farage. Of course, since then we have had a few missteps by this campaign run by Rishi Sunak. The D-Day issue coming back early for a media again was widely criticised by his own side for that. And then, of course, the gambling gate story ongoing. A couple of candidates have had their support withdrawn by Rishi Sunak. He's been embattled because of that. So he hasn't had the best of luck or the best of campaigns, frankly, for the Tory Prime Minister. The eye-catching thing, though, the Liberal Democrats become the official opposition, according to this polling by electoral calculus and find out now. Reform UK get, wait for it, 18 MPs. You'll see Nigel Farage in the House of Commons, Richard Tice, he'll be in the House of Commons, Lee Anderson. These are names you'd never have thought would have happened before Nigel Farage chose to come back as the party's leader just 3 or 4 short weeks ago. Labour's best result since the 1930s, the Tories' worst one since 1900. History made across the board, 22 cabinet ministers to lose their seats. That's virtually the entire cabinet losing their seats. Who's left? James Cleverly, Home Secretary, Steve Barclay, the Environment Secretary, Mark Harper, the Transport Secretary, Lucy Fraser, Laura Trott, Tom Tugendhat, Mike Tomlinson, the Immigration Minister. Not many. Also, don't forget Jeremy Corbyn. He wins Islington North from Labour. So a quite an extraordinary set of results here. Again, the only poll that matters, as I'm sure we'll hear from the Tories tonight when they see this poll, is July the 4th. That's Thursday next week. But people are voting now. 1 in 5 of us vote in postal ballots, and so that'll be a worry, I think, that these numbers are coming out. This poll between the 14th of June and the 24th of June. That's just yesterday, Martin. So a shocking poll here for the Tory party, and alarming maybe for Labour. I was walking into this venue here, and I'm now in the spin room getting ready for the two-way debate, the final head-to-head debate between Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer. And one senior Labour figure said to me they are very worried, he said, that they wake up on Friday next week to an almighty shock and these polls are all wrong. So right now, Labour is worried that these polls forecasting a supermajority for the Labour Party are wrong. But as things stand, they're all saying the same thing. Either the pollsters are wrong, or Labour's in for an enormous shock next week.
Now, of course, polls are polls. No polls predicted Brexit. No polls predicted Donald Trump would get elected. And yet, Chris, we are seeing a trend emerging. And it seems to be a trend of a widening majority, a decreasing of the Conservative vote, and, as you said, an increase in Liberal Democrats and an increase in the Reform vote. With each poll that goes, the Reform have been cast to get 0 seats in a YouGov poll and in a Telegraph poll. And then it was 5 seats, beg your pardon, in YouGov, and now 18 in this poll. There seems to be 3 trends in parallel there going on, Chris, and maybe across this many polls, there's something in this movement.
Well, there might be, but looking at the breakdown of the share of the vote, 40% vote Labour, 20% vote Conservative, 11% vote Lib Dems, and they get 71 MPs. 18% vote Reform, and they get 18 MPs. Now, this is why you're hearing from Nigel Farage calls for some form of electoral reform. Why is it that you can get, a third less, according to this, in vote share than the Liberal Democrat, more than Liberal Democrats, forgive me, but get a fraction of their MPs, and that's not fair, they would say. The reason why that is, of course, is that Reform UK, a relatively new party, a rebadged Brexit party from 2019, doesn't know where voters are, Martin. The older parties, the Tories, Lib Dems and Labour, they know where the voters live. They know what doors to knock on, remind Mrs. Miggins at number 42 Acacia Avenue to make sure she votes, know where to go, because not a lot of people move around between elections. Reform UK has no idea where they are. If they get 18 MPs, I do find that very extraordinary, because that'll mean that essentially a social media campaign with no idea where any of their supporters live has gone from 0 to 18 MPs. Now, given the Liberal Democrats are around a dozen or so, and they've been around, well, in their current form, since the early 90s or late 80s, I find 18 MPs extraordinary and historic for a challenger party.
Hey, Chris Hope, thanks for joining us there live from the Spin Room in Nottingham, my home city. Thanks for joining us.